So I'm going to spend my time, as you can see, that I'm going to be talking about the power of empathy, and particularly as it relates to selling. Because let's face it, right now, the world needs some empathy. The world's a pretty scary place right now. You know, I know my social media feeds, watching TV, watching the news, it's all pretty scary. There's so much uncertainty that's happening. So this really creates fear. And there's many individuals and companies that are really using this as an opportunity to almost make you scared and want to buy their products because of fear versus because it's the right thing to do. But many of these companies I've been finding, and many salespeople are kind of fearful themselves because there's so much uncertainty. And so it's really impacting the way that they sell. So that comes to me with the notion of fear, you know? So here's this idea of the selling from fear. So think about a time that you have maybe been selling from fear. And how did that make you feel? Maybe you were fearful that you weren't going to make your sales target. Maybe you were fearful that you had to make your bonus or payroll if you own the business. And so how did that impact the way that you actually sold to people? And similarly, think about a time that somebody was selling you something and you started to think about the way that they were selling, and were they actually selling it through fear themselves? Maybe they needed to hit a target. Maybe they need to hit their budget. Or they certainly just didn't understand what your needs were. So it made me start to think about this whole idea of selling from fear. And so when I'm selling from fear, I did a little self-reflection in preparation for this. When I'm selling from fear, when I'm thinking about quotas, when I'm thinking about payroll, when I'm thinking about some of the things that happen in my business, I feel like I actually start to come across as salesy. I put on that used car salesperson jacket, and I am starting to sort of sell for the sake of selling and not because I'm making a connection with the customer. And when I do that, I actually find that it's harder to close my customer because I'm missing that connection. And then what happens to me is that the harder that I try and sell them, then it is also harder.
Come here, buddy.
To close. And then with it being hard to close creates this scarcity mindset, because then I think, uh-oh, I'm not closing it. Now I'm not going to be able to, you know, I really was counting on this sale. And then what that really does is it starts to take me out of my authenticity, because I really understand that when I am dealing with my customers in an authentic way, I can actually connect with them better. And I say this from experience because in late 2007 and early 2008, I was having a very tough time in my business. I had sort of plateaued, and then we were having some challenges with it. And I was really struggling to make sales. And I found that the harder that I was pushing, the worse it was going. And at the same time, I was going through some personal things at home. I was getting a divorce. and then not only that, but the stock market was crashing, the real estate was crashing, and it was causing so much stress and anxiety in me. It was coming through in terms of how I was communicating and working with my clients. So much so that I actually had a health crisis, which is a story for another day and maybe another time that I come back and speak to you guys again. But it really caused so much stress and anxiety. I had to take a break. And so with taking that break, I really used this time to do a lot of self-discovery and really step back and try and understand what did I want my life to look like going forward, personally as well as professionally. And it really made me take a time to love myself, spend time on self-care, and really understand what my core values were and what my guiding principles were and what I wanted my services and products to be as my offering for my clients. Because when I wasn't being authentic, I couldn't close sales. When I was stretching myself, maybe responding to opportunities that weren't quite in my zone of genius, it was causing me stress, and I wasn't closing sales anyway, and I was working way harder at doing it. So I really used this time to become more authentic. And with that, have more empathy, because I was just trying to sell, and I wasn't really trying to understand my customers. And I wasn't really getting to the heart of what their needs were and what their values were and how I could be of service to them to be able to offer them the right products for them. So when we think now and come back to 2020, and I go into this new crisis that we're in right now with a different vision, with that 2020 vision, to be cliche, that we're hearing so much. After the 10 years of rebuilding my business, that I was able to not only get back on my feet, but my business grew exponentially over that time period because of these tools, because of being very authentic and very real with my clients, and very, I'm a consultant, but at the same time, we are a very collaborative approach with all our clients. And so I find that right now, selling is very different than even than it was in January and February because of Corona. And so, rather than using that fear, selling from fear, it's really a good time to sort of step back and have empathy and try and understand what our customers need from us right now and how we can be of service to them. So I want to tell you a little story about a client that I have been nurturing for almost a year, just coming on a year, that reached out to me, and then finally reached out to me in November. And this was a really big opportunity. They came to our company, and it was our ideal company. We do tons of work. This is a very specialized a part of retail that we service, that we have very little competition. And they came to us in November. They told us that they were getting ready to go out to RFP, out to get requests for proposals. And sure enough, it came through in January. We submitted the proposal in February as they suggested, and they were planning to award this job in late March. And this was, this was 20% of our annual revenue. So this is a big client for us. So of course we submitted it. We were feeling great about this project, excited to do the project, not to mention the fact that it was going to be great for sales. And then we all know what happened at the end of March. Everything was in crisis adaptation, shutting down, including our client because of the sector that they're in. So of course I didn't sort of even expect to hear from them for a while. But come the end of April, I thought, you know what, it'd be good to know whether it's even going to go ahead or not go ahead, whether we should be planning for it, whether we should keep a little bit of bench strength to make sure that if it comes through. So I reached out to the client, and her response was, oh, actually, we're just about to go into a meeting this week to award the winner. So she called me a few days later. She said, and actually I was kind of surprised she called me. I thought I was expecting an email, and she came to me and she said, just wanted to let you know you won, and we're really looking forward. I'm going to get you the contract. So we were so excited. We were like having this virtual champagne amongst the team. We were really excited, especially a few projects, had been put on the side. And so we're really excited. She said, I'll get you the contract at the beginning of next week. So instead of the contract, I got a call from her the following week, and she said, the team met again and think that we should shelf the project until January. So my heart sunk, and I went into fear, and I started to, for about 20-30 seconds, I was kind of thinking, uh-oh, we don't really want to lose this. And then I stopped myself from going into that fear, and then I put myself in their shoes. And I started thinking about why they might be wanting to shelve it. They're busy, they've got they've got parts of their business that are shut down, they're trying to adapt, and so on. But so I got into their shoes for a moment and wanted to think about that. But then I stepped back into mine again, but with a different perspective in terms of the fact that we can really help them now, rather than putting it on the shelf till January, which I actually think would be a big mistake from them. This is actually an opportunity for them. And so we were able to have a conversation a couple of days later, and worked through the scope of work and adapted it so we could actually be providing them the service now while they're actually in adaptation. And rather than waiting till January when their business might be in crisis, we can actually help them through the crisis as well as their objective. So we now have a contract and we're moving ahead. And I just wanted to use that example because it was very easy for me my first reaction was even just to step into fear. And I had to step away from us for a second and make sure and come back to how I add value for this customer and how I can understand. And by having the empathy, I could come back to them and help them understand and help them navigate the challenges that they were going to be facing. So they actually are getting a bit of a bonus deal because we're helping them navigate as well as their original scope of work. So it made me think a little bit about the notion of selling with empathy right now. And so we're reading data about the fact that people are more willing to connect on the phone and video calls right now. I'm finding that where, I used to have a flurry of emails or the odd call with somebody, I'm finding because people aren't traveling, they're not commuting. And so I'm finding a lot of people are wanting to jump onto video calls, which is so great from selling with empathy because you actually get that body language, you get to have that connection with them. So I really find that it is a great time to start to sell and be able to use empathy when selling. And like I said, with my customer and my situation is I wasn't selling, I was trying to help them understand how I provide value for them. And so, understanding their position that they're right in. And then also anticipating their needs because I know what's keeping these guys up at night. And so we can work through that as we work together. So I wanted to end this. This is more, I know from a time perspective, you're going to get these slides. So I wanted to leave you with this exercise to do, and you can kind of start thinking about it as you're participating today. But I wanted you to think about a client that you're going to talk to tomorrow. And many of you have maybe done exercises that you've thought of your ideal customer or your customer avatar. We actually had a client that we worked with that was a tween, 9 to 12 young girl accessory brand. And they were so passionate about understanding who their customer was that they actually had their lobby of their office was like walking through a tween bedroom. So every time you came into work, you had to walk through this space and kind of get your teenage girl head on to get into that perspective. And so I wanted to take you through an exercise that is going to help you give some different perspectives and help you with selling with empathy. So think about that client that you're going to talk to tomorrow, talk to today. Maybe they've been challenging in terms of working with, or maybe it's somebody that you want to work with. And so from your perspective, I want you to answer these questions. What is top of mind as you prepare for the meeting? What is most important to you as you think about this meeting that you're going to have with the client? And what are you most concerned about when you're thinking about having this meeting? And how will you know the meeting is a success? So if you're doing this from home and you're going to do it at a later time, what I want you to actually do is kind of shake it up. I want you to then move to a different space, move to a different place in your home, a different chair, because I want you to now get in your client's shoes. I want you to step into your client's perspective. And I want you to think about these questions from the client's perspective. If you were the client, what is the most important thing for you to prepare for as you're coming to the meeting? What are you thinking and feeling? What are you most concerned about as you come to this meeting? And what would make this meeting a success for you? Now, the third perspective is you're actually going to be an observer. So think of yourself as sort of flying over this interaction between yourself, the client, and the salesperson, and you're observing what's taking place. So ask yourself these questions. What do you notice what's going on when you're observing from afar or when you're observing over top? What is the difference and what's the same? And what do you notice is the most important thing going on? What do you notice as the biggest concern? And what do you notice regarding how this meeting, this meeting is going to be successful? So the final one, you're going to shake it off. You're going to come back to where you started. Come back to the same seat, and you're going to step in your perspective again, but you're going to remember the lens that you just looked at of the other two perspectives. And what do you notice when you're coming back to your world that you have a new perspective on? And what new information or insight do you have about how you're going to sell and how you're going to have empathy towards your client? And what will you or can you do with this new insight? So I hope you'll do this exercise. And certainly I would love to hear how it goes for you. If you have some insights, please feel free to reach out to me, stay connected. Maybe it's a great place to have some chat in the forum after this. And thanks for having me.